Just doing a communications check. Am I coming in okay?
Good morning, Mark. You are. Thank you for being here. It's good to see you again virtually. All right, it's 8:30 and we're going to get started today. It's nice to start our day without so much rain like we had yesterday. It was a manic Monday for sure. But I want to welcome you all here to our second session in our Career Spotlight series. We're going to have a great focus today on careers in information technology and cybersecurity. We have a lot of you on today and excited to see such great participation. Hope you're having a great school year. We want to welcome our colleagues from outside of Macomb County that have joined us as well. We continue to enjoy having collaboration and share with colleagues that have the same passion and focus for helping our students in the Southeast Michigan region. So thank you all for being here and welcome. I put the attendance in the chat for you. As you know the drill, if you've done things with me in the last year, I have to have a link. I have to have your attendance recorded. And then you'll get a sketch application for us to make sure that you get your career sketch credit for your professional endorsement. If you have a connection issue or some type of glitch, feel free to reach out to me. It's a little hard in the chat when I'm trying to manage the ship right now, but you can reach out to me through email and we'll make sure that your attendance is credited. We just ask that you stay on for the duration. That's the criteria. So, joining and then leaving within a half hour doesn't allow me to give you that sketch credit. So those of you that don't know me, I am Sarah Strobeck. I'm a former high school teacher, high school counselor, middle school counselor, but all things counseling and all things career readiness in the Macomb ISD. So thank you for being here today. We're really excited to introduce a few of our panelists today, our speakers that are going to give you a wealth of information. So today's agenda, we're going to get right to our professionals that have joined us today. I could make PowerPoints and handouts all I want, but really we want to hear from the experts that are in this profession so that we have the knowledge and information we need to best advise our students. I will have to say, in my work as a career counselor throughout Wayne County for the last 5 years prior to this job, I really struggled with students that were interested in going into information technology. They tend to be students that work alone. They're not necessarily focused on looking at these long college careers. They're very self-starters. They like to work independently. And so I struggled helping and motivating students to see that there's a place for them in the community college and beyond in the information technology world. A lot of them are gamers and a lot of them want to design video games. So the big lift for us as school counselors is how do we motivate those types of students to see that with some certificates that can lead to degrees, they could have a very prosperous career that has great impact on the world of work with all different career pathways. So today it's my pleasure to introduce to you two professionals. I've had the pleasure of hearing their presentations before, so which is why I reached out to both of them. We have Keith Navbosny, who's representing Macomb Community College. He's going to speak about what the college offers. He's going to talk about various IT careers. And then we're going to hand over to Mark, who he's got a riveting presentation and just a great history working in cybersecurity. And now as an education program director, he's dedicated his time to doing a lot of this work, which is educating students and counselors and people to motivate them to consider cybersecurity as a future career. I'm going to hold the Zoom on after the 9:30 stop time. So if anybody is interested and if our presenters are available, just to hold on for a couple minutes if we run past that 9:30, if there's any direct questions. I'm recording this session. It will be available to you, something you can show in class to your students as well. I want to show you and remind you one last item before I hand off to our first speaker, Keith, is our Macomb Engage website. So myself and my partner at the MISD, Shannon Williams, have designed this website as a container for all of you as school counselors and career professionals to be able to visit this website and access lots of information in various career pathways. In specific, I want to show you this right tab here where you'll see pathway guides. You'll be able to pull up information and data on specific career pathways. You can print these. These are PDFs. They're local data information, Southeast Michigan information. It's great one-pagers for you to give your students. We have a lot of good resources under the career development tab. As events start to populate into this year, career focused events, you'll see the Career Spotlight series, which you're participating in right now, is also going to be listed here with the future events I have planned for you. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that website. If you have not seen it yet, save it on your desktop. It's macombengage.org. And it is my charge and my mission to make sure I continuously populate that website with resources for you as a one-stop shop as you work with your students in your offices and in the classrooms. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand off to Keith Nabazi from Macomb Community College. And Keith, when you wrap up, you can go ahead and hand it over to Mark. And Mark, I'll make sure that you have co-host capabilities as well. And then when we come to a close at 9:30, I'll make sure that sign out is posted again for you in the chat, everyone, and you'll be on your way.
Okay, all right, 1 second. Let me share my screen here. Here we go. Okay, I'm assuming everybody can see that all right?
Nope, it's not working, Keith.
Really? Let me double check.
Maybe try it again.
Nope, glad I asked.
Yeah, you never know.
1 second. Is that working?
That's working. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right, excellent. Hi, my name is Keith Nabazi. I'm a professor of information technology at Macomb Community College, and I'm going to talk to you about some of our IT programs, but more specifically about the cybersecurity program, of which I'm the lead professor for. So I worked in the IT industry for about 15 years. Primarily worked for a company called EDS, which then eventually became Hewlett-Packard. I did that for about 15 years. I was a server administrator, firewall administrator, network designer. I supported large customers around the country, got to travel around the United States, around the world a little bit. It was a great job. And yet, despite all that, I decided to change careers and become a full-time professor at Macomb in 2011. And I've been the lead instructor for the cybersecurity program at Macomb ever since. I'm certified in cybersecurity. I have my CISSP and my Security Plus certificate. CISSP is a pretty, I don't know, I don't want to say, it's a pretty substantial certification, I guess. So at least for higher level professionals, it's considered a good certification to have. And the Security Plus, the CompTIA Security Plus certification is a more entry level certification exam. So I kind of cover both ends of that when I talk to my students about it. So I know Sarah said you were all interested in what the jobs outlook was or is for information technology. So I have a few slides covering some of the different career paths leading into information technology careers. So these came from ONET Online. And the first one here is basically just for computer user support specialists. This might be somebody handling desktop issues, something along the lines of a help desk, something like that. And I will say you really need to be careful to take any of the salary numbers with a large grain of salt. Those are national averages, and some areas of the country, pay a lot more than other areas of the country. So I think it's always good to be cautious about how you approach those salary numbers. One should never assume that just because it says $52,000 here, that's what you're going to walk out of Macomb Community College making right away. That would be phenomenal. Actually, some of the other career paths have even higher salaries, but I never guarantee that with any of my students. I always try to have them set their expectations appropriately. But for sure, there's good job outlooks. There's a good job outlook here as well. This is for computer network support specialists. So instead of supporting the desktop devices, like PCs and printers, which would be more on the computer user support specialist side, the network support specialist, this is where they're taking care of more of the infrastructure side, like routers, switches, wireless networks, things like that. Servers would fall under this category as well. You can see that the salary range for this is a little bit higher. And in both cases, this one says bachelor's degree or associate's degree usually needed, bachelor's degree or high school diploma. I'm surprised they don't show associate degree in there, but for sure, computer user support specialist is definitely much more of an entry level type gig. This is definitely more of like this could also be an entry level gig too, but they're expecting more skills in like the higher level technologies like servers and network devices. And Macomb does have programs that lead into careers like this. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Web developers is still a strong career path. This is one of those areas like where everybody's doing everything on the web. With the advent of smartphones and tablets, it's even become more challenging to develop websites, right? Because now you not only have to develop them so they work on like a computer or a laptop display, but now they also have to work on a tablet or a smartphone. And I think we've all had the experience where we've gone to a website on our smartphone and been horribly disappointed that we couldn't like click on something or find the thing we wanted because it hadn't been optimized for a smaller platform. And all that goes back to who the web designer is that was working on it. So it's a challenging career. Computer programming, it says below average job outlook here. I have no idea why it says that. That doesn't make any sense at all to me. I for sure agree that a bachelor's degree is definitely something that's usually looked for a career in computer programming. Everything requires coding of some kind. Websites need tools in the back end. Large customers are creating their own internal programs to do repetitive tasks or to analyze data. So I think computer programming is still going to be a huge thing. And even if I would say, as you're counseling your students, even if being a computer programmer where that's not, they don't want that, let me back up and say, even if you do not want to be a computer programmer where you are working 40 hours a week just on computer programming, most IT career paths require some fundamental knowledge of computer programming. So learning it in high school, learning it on your own, really helpful. There's always some little aspect where knowing even just a little bit about computer programming can help you in multiple other career paths. This kind of gets into my area of expertise, the information security analysts. And I love that start or that average salary there, that $103,000. That sounds great to me. And I will say that it is not unheard of for people to make that kind of salary in a degree or with a career path in information security. Cybersecurity, everybody needs it. Every company, large, small, medium, every industry needs cybersecurity specialists. Every time you read an article, in the newspaper or online, or you hear a news report about someone being hacked or about there being a security breach, it's just further evidence of the importance of cybersecurity. So as I like to tell my students, every time you hear one of those things, that just basically indicates, I'll say, career security for you, that there's always going to be opportunities going on into the future. So, how do you start a career in IT? It's changed, right? Back when I started like 25 some years ago, 26 years ago, it was different. You could almost, if you could spell IT, they like to say, and if you could spell PC and you showed up and you knew how to turn a computer on, you could almost get a job in IT. And that's not far from the truth. But things have changed quite a bit since then. The market has changed. The expectations are different now. So what I usually like to tell my students is that there's a trifecta of things that usually make it hard for you to be turned down for a job, that you want to have a skill set and a combination of skills that when you apply for a job, that the employer looks at you and says, wow, yeah, we really want to hire this person. We do not have a good reason to say no to them. And I put those down to a degree, certifications, and then work experience. So on the degree side, welcome to Macomb Community College. We have multiple programs in IT. So almost no matter what your interest in IT is, we have something to kind of fill that need or that desire in you to learn more about it. Our website, macomb.edu, I did a screenshot here, but there's a future students button you can click on, and you can browse through the different programs we have at Macomb. That's a good place to start. Here's a list of the programs we have at Macomb. IT professional is kind of a more general IT degree, kind of maybe for somebody who's not exactly sure what they want to do, but they want to get a little bit of everything when it comes to IT. Cloud computing, if you've ever heard of Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud, these are all cloud-based services that need someone to create technologies or manage them, online in the cloud. And this is a relatively new program at Macomb. It's only been around for about 2 years. It started just before the pandemic, so it's still kind of getting its feet under it. But it focuses on using Amazon Web Services to teach students how to set up servers in the cloud, how to configure them, how to protect them. So it's a really interesting program for the future. Cisco Network Professional. Cisco is a provider of technology that they build the routers and switches that basically run chunks of the internet, or if you go to a large company, many times the technology that's hidden in the closet or in the ceiling is run by Cisco, or it's built by Cisco and then run by Cisco Network Professionals. And we have a degree program for students that might be interested in that, configuring the technology that people use, whether it's the wireless network, wired network like the routers and switches. Network security professional, cybersecurity, that's my program. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But obviously, I feel very passionately about cybersecurity. I think that's a strong career path as well. For programming, we have a couple different categories here. We have, I'll say, a more general programming where we cover different languages like Java, C#, C++. And we also have a programming for electronic games. So I know Sarah mentioned students who are gamers who might be interested in doing something more creatively. The electronic game programming program is something they might want to think about. I've actually sat in on one of those classes where the students have created a program over the semester. And then on the last 1 or 2 days of the semester, they demonstrate their program and talk about it. And it is a challenging program. It is a challenging class. Just that one class is challenging, but it's great to see the students create these really cool little games that seem simple, but the programming that goes behind them to make them work is much more complicated than you might expect. So that's really cool. And then finally, website programming. Like I mentioned earlier, website programming is still a thing. It's much more complicated than I think we all realize, given the multiple types of platforms that they have to make websites work for. So it is a challenging program as well. And then when going beyond just the interface that we all deal with, you also have to deal with databases on the back end. So it can interface, pull up what your shopping cart is and things like that. There's a whole bunch of other things that go into it. And then even website optimization is also part of that as well. So the cybersecurity degree at Macomb, it's an AAS degree, so it's an Associate of Applied Science. It's 62 credit hours. Is it possible to get it done in 2 years? Sure. If you took the maximum number of credits each semester and maybe snuck in a class over the spring or summer once in a while, you could probably get it done in about 2 years. I think most of my students probably take somewhere between 2 and 3 years to finish the program. It's hard to go full-time, full bore for two-ish years. But I think most of my students probably finish in between 2 and 3 years would be my guess. And 19 credits of that is general education, 31 is IT fundamentals, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the cybersecurity program, there's like 4 specific classes related to cybersecurity. And the cybersecurity degree can be completed completely online. That's true for all of our IT programs now. That's something I'll say, one of the benefits of the pandemic, that it kind of drove us to like have to, where we had gaps, where we had some courses that weren't online. The pandemic kind of drove us to find a way to, present those classes online. And so now it is possible to complete all of our IT degrees completely online. Now, that said, you might not be able to do it as fast as possible, right? So that does not mean that every class is offered online every semester. So for example, in my program, I have a couple classes that will be offered like on ground in the fall, then online in the winter. So, you might have to wait like an extra semester to find that class online if that's your choice. But, if you wait the cycle, or if you plan it correctly, that you should be able to finish your degree. And it's still within like 2 or 3 years. Here are the information technology courses. This first class, ITCS 1010, is essentially Microsoft Office with a little bit of technology thrown in there. The ITCS 1140 class is our computer programming, and that uses Python. And then principles of networking, talking about the basics of technology, web programming. And then finally, we get into, like, I'll say some more administrative type classes, network design, Windows Server Administrator, Linux administration, both the first and second class, and then finally cloud administrator. So what I'm trying to do here with the program is make sure that my students have a grounding in multiple facets of technology to prepare them best for like whatever they might end up doing, on their career path, or once they get that first job in IT. Here are the core classes for the cybersecurity program. First class, ITI 1200, is related to the Security Plus certification. The certification is not part of the class, right? The CompTIA certification is kind of expensive, costs about $350-ish, I think, last time I checked. I could be wrong about that, which is almost as much as which is almost the same as what my class itself costs. So that's not part of the program, but if you take my class and you study and you prepare for the exam afterwards, then you're in good shape to pass that exam. And that's also true for the IT&T 1500 class. That's aligned with the Network Plus certification as well. But again, it's not part of the course because the price of the exam is pretty high. And then we've got a policies and risk management class, certified ethical hacker, and pen testing analysis. The certified ethical hacker and pen testing classes are very strongly focused on hands-on skills, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So yeah, so what are the objectives of my program? Well, I'm really big on actual hands-on skills that students are going to use in the real world. Performing vulnerability scans. We learn password cracking to like really get a good understanding of like what makes a strong password, what makes a weak password. Wireless hacking. Are wireless networks safe? Well, they are if you configure them correctly, or else you'd say they're safer if you configure them correctly. But we do that stuff in my classes to show like where the weaknesses are. And then I mentioned earlier about the systems administration classes like Windows and Linux. Absolutely vital that students have a grounding in how those systems work if you're going to secure them. And then I'm also strong on report writing and analysis. I think students do more writing in my cybersecurity program, almost as much writing in my cybersecurity program as they probably do in an English class, because in the real world, you do a lot of that. You have to write a lot of memos, or write emails, or respond to people, explain like why something broke. What are you going to do to fix it? How do we prevent this from happening again? And so that communication skill is really, really important. Macomb also has transfers to four-year schools. We have really good articulation agreements with Walsh, Fair State, Eastern, Western Michigan. So Macomb is a good starting point, and I think we have a very strong program. But it's important for students to think into the future that they probably really want to plan on getting a bachelor's degree. In 2019, Macomb became a Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. I'm really proud of this. Many of the schools I mentioned as far as the four-year schools that we have articulation agreements with, Walsh and Ferris, for example, Eastern Michigan, are also centers of academic excellence on the four-year level. So this is like just further demonstration and reinforcement of the robustness and strength of our program. And I feel really proud of that. Ooh, wrong way, there we go. So I'll talk about certifications for a quick minute. There's multiple certifications in IT, probably hundreds. They all provide a different niche value, I would say. But as far as ones that students at the community college level can absolutely target and prepare themselves for, the CompTIA Network Plus and Security Plus certifications, well within their capabilities. The Red Hat Certified System Administrator for Linux, and the Cisco Certified Network Associate as well. These are all certifications that when students complete, like their, I'll say, whichever, depending on which program they're focused on, cybersecurity or Cisco networking, for example. There's Amazon Web Services certifications as well. That these are absolutely something that are within their capability once they complete their associate degree at Macomb. Work experience, this is usually the hard part, right? Everyone wants to get a job. It's hard to get that job. My advice to students is always, human networking is important. Talk to everyone you know. Let everyone you know you're looking for a job in IT. You never know when that new person you meet is going to say, oh, hey, I know somebody, or hey, we're looking to hire somebody who can work on computers. And that's a really good place to start. Macomb Career Services has a career portal. You can upload your resume, and businesses in the area will post like they're looking for people. So you can kind of meet up that way. Macomb hosts a job fair every year. And my son, actually, who's not in IT, he's in a different career path, but he got his first job, by going to the job fair at Macomb. So I always like to think about that positively. And then, of course, job websites like monster.com, dice.com, it's another way to get into it. Other ideas. Other ways to prepare, I would say one, if you're trying to coach your students on like what they should do before they go to college, I would say get a good laptop, a Windows laptop, not a Macintosh. Macs are great machines, don't get me wrong. I'm an Apple iPhone lover, have been for a long time, but for about $500, you can get a solid Windows PC that's probably gonna be great for like the 3-ish years you're gonna be in college. There's some hangups with Macs that they don't work with every kind of software, every kind of application you might need. And so you're going to have to always jump through hoops if you have a Mac. But if you're going into like a, what we call the MACA program, which is like doing computer aided design or something like graphic arts, it makes a lot more sense to get a Mac. But if you're going into IT, I would say a Windows PC is going to be your best bet. Other things they can do on their own, learn programming. Python is great. Learn Linux and Windows. Linux is free. You can download it online. Actually, Windows is going to have a new capability where Windows 11 is going to have like Linux as like a subsystem in it. So you can actually learn it even just on your Windows 11 PC. And I like to tell students, figure out what you like doing, figure out what you don't like doing. If you hate programming, then don't focus on programming. If you really like, cybersecurity and hacking stuff, then come talk to me. Other things I would say from, for me talking to you all, as far as counselors, encourage more young women to get into IT. It's a great career path. I never have enough women in my classes. If I have like 3 or 4 in a class of 24, it's a lot. And remarkably, I don't mean remarkably in a bad way, I mean remarkably in an astonishing way, that if I've got 3 or 4 women in one class, usually one of them is one of my top students. So when they pick my program, they definitely pick it because they're passionate about it, they want to do well. And a couple of my former female students have gone on to do amazing things. One of my former students works in the IT department in Macomb, and I couldn't be prouder of that. And of course, they can always contact me if they have questions about the cybersecurity program. I love talking about it. So yeah. Questions?
Keith, we did have one about the cybersecurity classes. Are they sequential, where a student has to take one, then the next, or can they be taken concurrently?
Most of them follow a progression, right? Like, you start off with and we have like a career pathway, or not career path, guided pathway on the website where it kind of walks you through that. So for example, you could take computer programming and Network Plus at the same time, but you have to take Network Plus before you take Security Plus, before you take Ethical Hacker, before you take pen testing, right? That is a very specific path you have to follow. So you cannot take like Network Plus and Security Plus at the same time, because the Security Plus class builds on things from Network Plus. Ethical Hacker builds on things from the Security Plus class.
All right. So, oh, great.
That's
Everyone
it.
grab your phones and take a picture of this.
Yeah, and like I said, feel free to contact me, email me if you have any questions. I'm happy to do, if even if your high school wanted me to do a presentation about the cybersecurity program, let me know and I'll find a way to do it. Okay,
Thank
so
you,
Sarah,
Keith.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go ahead and stop sharing.
Okay. And Mark, you should be ready to go.
There we go. Okay. Keith, everybody can hear me good. Okay. Keith, I really appreciated your presentation. Spot on what you've talked about. And what I hope to do today is to kind of emphasize, Keith, what you shared with these counselors. And counselors, we are here to help you. I spent 43 years in government service, 25 in the Air Force, another 18 at the National Security Agency. And since about 1990, I've been involved in what we call today cybersecurity, but it's computer security, information assurance, InfoSec, all those terms were just ways to get more money out of Congress, really. It's all about securing our computers. So I've been doing it for a long time. And so counselors, I really want to emphasize, you will have my email. I provided this briefing in a PDF form to Sarah. So please share this with everyone. My contact information, Keith gave you your contact information. We're here to help you help these students, because this title of this briefing, Cybersecurity in Peril, is in fact not over dramatic. We are at a state in our nation to where we are in big trouble in cybersecurity. And I hope to share that with you and emphasize that's why institutions like Keith and they are CAEs, and I'll talk about that, is so important. And why is that? Well, back in my day, we had these big, in fact, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a Cray computer in this picture, the guy in the middle of the Cray core, and all of that ancillary equipment around it helped run that Cray computer. And that is one computer room with all the disks and everything else that helped. The guy to the left on the consoles, the two guys are there to run that one little round computer. And that's what I grew up in back in the 70s and 80s. Today, we have to manage all these things that we hold in our hands. Those devices in that little stick guy's hands are more powerful than that Cray computer. And that's what our kids have in their hands. And more importantly, it's all interconnected. And our kids don't understand that. I think the threat that poses is the power in their hands, and the interconnectivity is something that they don't comprehend, because it's the threat, the digital threat, the cyber threat, that is so important. And here is Mr. Clapper. He was the DNI during his term, and in his briefing to the intelligence community, he was stating that cyber attacks provide more peril to us than terrorism. Let me let that sink in for a second. Cyber attacks are posing more problems for our country than terrorism. And why is that? It's because of this. There's so much disinformation and misinformation. If you look at all those little bubble icons that kind of look like M&Ms, those are all the tools our kids are using. Snapchat, TikTok. My goodness, I will not put TikTok on my phone because I know where TikTok was developed. all of these different tools that the kids use to communicate to each other provide a lucrative attack path for that bad guy in this picture. And that bad guy is not necessarily stealing their information. That bad guy is putting misinformation, disinformation out on the internet to try to control their thinking, their thoughts, influence their decisions in all types of matters, whether it be shopping or whether it be what they think in national politics, any type of forum on what they should be thinking about. Disinformation and misinformation is out there. We grew up, most of us, in an environment to where we had a newspaper, and that newspaper in print had an editor, and that editor was charged to make sure that everything in that newspaper was sourced, triple sourced, and had the highest integrity of truth. Because of the internet, that's gone. We will never get that back. And because of that, every person who holds this device is their own personal editor. Many people don't know how to be an editor. Many people don't know that they need to check sources. I've received several, you get them, hey, a friend sends you this, say, hey, look at this article, look at this particular video, this is true, and all this other kind of stuff. I looked at one, and one was to us seniors. It was sent out, and it was I knew this gentleman who retransmitted this article very well, and so I sent him back and said, hey, you need to check your sources, and I showed him some other sources. Supposedly, he sent out this article that said that if you're having a heart attack, that if you cough really hard, it'll help stop the heart attack. And it went through this whole thing on how to help somebody if they're having a heart attack, to get them to cough and all this kind of good stuff. So it sounds comical to some of us, right? But he sent this out seriously to all of us who were up in our 60s, right? And said, hey, you need to be informed about this so you can help your fellow person. And so I actually am a hospital chaplain, and so I work in a hospital. Both of my daughters are nurses, one with a PhD and the other is a nurse practitioner, and my son-in-law is also a nurse. So I sent it to them. They got a big chuckle, but they also sent me articles which debunked that particular fact. So I sent this information very kindly to my friend and said, hey, this is another one of those disinformation, misinformation, and it seems that's not a big deal. But some people grabbed a hold of that. And he said, I had no idea that was not true. And so we are pushed into this environment now to where we have to be our own editors. And our kids don't know that. And so that's our job, to make sure they understand. And there's lots of ways to combat and protect ourselves. Keith talked about many of them. I'm not going to go into these best practices because there's lots of them. What I would like to foot stomp what Keith commented on as well. There's lots of information out there on YouTube that is good information. If you search for cybersecurity best practices, the National Security Agency, again, where I worked for about 20 years, has a lot of unclassified information out on their website. Great source of information to help to protect you. One of the things we are trying to do for middle schools and high schools is to provide information. We just published this book called Outsmart Cyber Threats. It's geared towards the 6th, 7th, 8th grader, but I've received information from many high school teachers that this hits their freshman and sophomore students as well. The links are there. Again, I sent this briefing. It is totally free. Everything we do at the National Cryptologic Foundation is totally free to all teachers anywhere in the United States, because we have great benefactors who give us the money. The Gula Foundation provided us the money for this booklet, so we're able to give it to you for free. It's downloadable by PDF, or you can purchase the actual hard copy of the booklet. But it's trying to get the language a little bit more understandable to the kids. And in this book, it traces somebody who downloads something really bad on their cell phone and the impact to their friends in school. Talks then a lot about how to protect yourself in that environment, and then how to back out of that and get your phone back to a good standing. So it's a fun book to read. And so I encourage you to at least go look at the book. It's available online. Keith talked about the job environment, and that's another part I wanted to speak with you folks this morning as counselors, because there's lots of cyber jobs out there. Keith talked about the certifications. So right out of high school, these students can get their certifications. CompTIA, he talked about that. CISSP, I agree, Keith, that's a tough one to get. And I remember back in the early 1990s, where I was lucky enough to be part of the team that helped set up those criteria for the CISSP, and also part of the team that helped set up the criteria to get CAEs approved, et cetera. So I've been lucky to be in this environment for a long time. And this is very important for the students to know, that there is a pathway to work that goes beyond just going to college. But there is room for college experience, post-college, and in multiple disciplines. This is a site that I would like all of your students to have bookmarked. It's called cyberseek.org. I'm sure Keith has been on this site many times. It's run by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So it is a governmental site, part of the NICE program, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. This site, as you notice, I pulled up Michigan on purpose for today. And I really appreciate too, sir, I forgot to mention at the beginning that you're allowing this Boilermaker to give this talk to a Wolverine state. But
we'll forgive you.
Thank you. I don't know if we play you guys this year, but we just got whacked by Wisconsin. So what the heck, right? But there's over 7,000 jobs available today in Michigan that cannot be filled. Think about that. There's over 464,000 jobs nationwide. This is why places like Keith's school and the rest of the centers of academic excellence, plus programs for high school students that they can get certifications and get out there. You'll notice on this site that it will show you how many of those jobs are right out of high school, how many need college degrees, how many need post-college degrees. It'll talk about what certifications are needed over on that right-hand side. I know it's hard to read on this slide, but when you go to the site, it's easier. All those blue dots down on the lower talk about the different types of job skills that are needed for that. Absorb the magnitude of our problem here. There's 464,000 openings where people are trying to protect the networks of this nation. That's staggering. They don't have that type of shortage in China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Absorb that challenge. And that's why we need you folks to help entice our students to be interested in this environment. And the careers, Keith talked about many of those. On the career progression side of this website, it'll walk a student through, an entry-level job, what a mid-level job, what a senior-level job, what type of skill sets they need, what type of education they need. It's just a great resource for these kids and yourselves to help educate the children. They don't all have to be computer scientists. I liked what Keith said. Find out what you like. Whatever you like, there's a role in cybersecurity. I have a student at Purdue that we work with in our cyber chats, and I hope you go to our website. I have the site there in the links. One of the things we do is we do these cyber chats, kind of like this. through a company called Nepris. And one of our speakers is an avid forensics person. She really wanted to do forensics because she has a interest in law enforcement. That is a phenomenal aspect of cybersecurity, is the forensics aspect. We need people in business. Like Keith said, we need people who know how to write, know how to tell people why things break and what needs to be done to fix it. We need library science. People say, why library science? If you look at a big database structure or a big data structure like Amazon, Google, any of those, Netflix, any of those areas, they're managing big data. Well, what is big data? It's a book. How do you manage that piece of information? How do you curate it? How do you store it? How do you label it? How do you retrieve it? How do you manage it? How do you protect it? All of that is library science. Not necessarily computer science. So you can see that almost any interest that a student might have, there's a role in cybersecurity for that role. Now, there's lots of opportunities to get that information. Here's another site that I'd like for your students to have bookmarked in their environment. It's a CAE community. You'll find Keith's school amongst the 300 and some odd schools that are part of the CAE community. Many of those are centers of cyber defense, which is Keith's. You also have centers for research and centers for computer operations. So there's lots of information on this website on where these schools are located, what are the requirements, how the different degree programs that are available. On our website, I'd like to point you to this. We discovered at the National Cryptologic Foundation that there wasn't really a focused approach to the K-12 environment in cyber security education. There was a lot of good curriculum, and let's be honest, there was a lot of bad curriculum floating out there on the internet. But there was some really good stuff. But it was what we would call, throwing Jell-O up on the wall and see what sticks. And there was some good stuff that stuck. But it didn't encapsulate it into much like normal educational environments do on a planned approach to the academic curriculum. So we worked with Dr. Melissa Dark out of Purdue University, along with several other teachers, University of Alabama, Moraine Valley Community College out of Chicago, and a few other institutions that focused on educational systems. And we came up with the cybersecurity curriculum guidelines. And you see them here, the 8 big ideas. This is what we feel needs to be taught at the high school level. And you'll see a lot of things that Keith talked about. You'll see ethics, establishing trust. One of the most important ones that I was very happy to see got added was adversarial thinking. When we work in the environment and we're teaching our students about cybersecurity, why do we have to have it? It's because there's a bad guy. We've always had bad guys. Nothing has changed. We've had bad guys since Cain and Abel, okay? And it won't change. The technology that the bad guys are using to achieve their goals is what's improving. A bank robber, for instance, back in the 1800s, had to walk in with a gun and a mask and try to steal the money. Today, bank robbers sit behind a keyboard and simply siphon off the rounded errors into an account down in the Cayman Islands. No different, still a bank robber, right? So we're always going to have bad people. And we need to talk about that adversary, that threat, that person who's trying to get at your information, and how you need to take care of your data, and how you need to insist on those people who are handling your data to take care of it as well. If you look at Facebook, if you look at all that stuff, we use it as an example, and this was a true story, if I don't mind taking about 60 seconds to tell it. It's a true story that is now declassified that we use all the time in our talks. A gentleman was huge on texting. I forget which tool it was, but it was one of those instant grams, and he was texting all over the place. I'm out on the back porch eating dinner, et cetera, and all those things. Well, he went on vacation, texting in the airport. Hey, I arrived at the airport, looking forward to my 2 weeks vacation. And you can probably hint on where I'm going with this. About 3 days into this trip, he was having a great time, posting pictures, all this other kind of good stuff. All of a sudden, a plumbing van pulls up in front of his house. Now, the plumber, in a perfect outfit, walks over to his neighbors and say, hey, I know, I'll call him John. I know John is down in Florida enjoying his time, and he called us and said that he really needed his bathroom improved. So we're here to improve his bathroom. Just wanted to let you know that we're in contact with John. We have a key to the house, etc. Just want to let you know you're going to see our truck. And then another bigger truck shows up. By the time John got back from his vacation, his house was totally cleaned out, and they even shampooed the carpets for him. It was incredible. His whole house was cleaned out, etc. And so kids don't understand that this is the tool the thieves use to track you and to do that. So these topics are what we think need to be taught in school. We teamed up with Teach Cyber, and they actually have a free 1-year course available for any high school in the United States, and it's totally free. You can go to their site. It teaches all these concepts. Key elements for your students, like Keith said, it's more than just what they're learning. We want them to be curious. We want them to be puzzle solvers. We want them to have those interpersonal skills. If they're not able to communicate in a group, there's nothing, and I'm sure Keith will share this with you, there's nothing in cybersecurity that's ever done by yourself. It's always done in teams. It's always done in collaboration. I know at NSA, on one of our floors, we've got the FBI, we've got the state folks, we've got CIA, we got DIA. Everybody's there to collaborate on what's going on. You need the ability to communicate. And so these are types of skill sets that we need in cyber. And so if you have a student who is really good at puzzles, really good at solving problems, that's a potential candidate for cybersecurity. We want them to have STEM type classes. That causes the curiosity and the thinking and the puzzle solving. Keith talked about programming. It may not be their cup of tea, but taking a program class forces them into this structured thinking. And so getting into a club in high school, if there isn't one, we can help create one. Robotics, that's another good opportunity. So I hope my story to you today is that people like Keith and myself are here to help you help your students, because I can tell you there's so many options out there, and there's so many opportunities for these students today. It's a rich environment. There is definitely career security in the cyber business. Here's my contact information. Please come to our website. There's lots of stuff to download, lots of activities for your students, and we're here to help. And I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Yeah, everybody feel free to unmute and popcorn questions out for these two gentlemen. Go ahead, Martha.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. So interesting. Thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. When you spoke about robotics, at one point, I'm from Lincoln High School, the Van Dyke District. Do you help set up? We had that before. Would you come and help set up or help us establish a robotics team again, or how would that work?
Yeah, we'd be happy to we're in Maryland.
Okay.
Don't mind driving out to Michigan, but that might be a little. I'll stop by through Lafayette, Indiana, though, my hometown.
There you go. Road trip.
And definitely on a football weekend. So maybe we can
There you
arrange
go.
that.
Big
But
one this weekend, right? For
right.
sure.
But be happy to talk with you about that. Happy to explore those folks in your local community. I know here in Maryland, we have, obviously we're in the Baltimore National Capital Region, and we've got companies like Lockheed, Martin, Marietta, Northrop
Yes.
Grumman, and there's a lot of folks there who are in the high schools helping, like with those robotic teams, with those Cyber Patriot teams, with the Gen Cyber teams, with all that stuff. So we have those types of contacts, and they have locations other places in the country. So we'd be more than happy to help explore that with you.
Nice.
But really, it's your local community, especially if you have defense industry type companies or high-tech companies. A lot of those companies want their employees to do outreach.
Nice. Thank you.
etc.
Thank you.
So Sarah, I think I've got a couple questions in the chat.
Go for it.
I responded to one of them about Macs versus PCs. One of the questions was about free certifications for students interested in pursuing certifications. One thing I'll say is that for two of the courses at Macomb, the Network Plus class and the Security Plus class, that we map those to those two CompTIA certifications, which cost money to take. As part of the courses at Macomb, we use a software package from a company called testout.com. Now, there is a certification that's included with the course that's part of testout.com. It's the Network Pro certification and the Security Pro certification. Now, these are certifications, but they do not have, I'll say, the street credibility that the CompTIA certifications do. So yeah, there are lots, I'm sure there are free certifications out there, and that can probably help somebody gain a little bit of confidence. And you could put it on a resume, but it might be one of those things like where you might have to just explain to somebody like what that certification means. The CompTIA, Security Plus and Network Plus certifications are widely recognized, similar to like the CCNA. Companies know what those certifications mean and what they can expect out of somebody who's achieved those certifications. So I'm not trying to like be negative about a free certification, but I just want to set expectations appropriately about what a hiring manager might look for. The second question was about cybersecurity jobs that are not 24/7 responsibility. I would say, honestly, when I worked in IT, I wasn't responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I would be on call. I mean, there were weeks where I was on call where, yeah, I would work my 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day, and then I'd, maybe have to answer the page. That was when we had pagers, at like 2 o'clock in the morning. That did happen sometimes. But it was pretty rare for me to like feel like I was like on hook 24 hours a day. So I don't think that's typical. I think it's much more likely that you're going to be on call periodically, where then, yeah, you have to be available, but it's not like you're working 24 hours a day. It's just you have to sometimes be available.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Keith. I think if you're working in an ops center, I know like at NSA, we have a security operational center, and we have a network threat operational center. Those are shifting or shift jobs. They're up 24/7. But if you look at everything that I did at NSA and you take a look at the pie chart, the NSOC and the NTOC jobs were maybe 5-10%. Most of the other jobs were in fact, policy. I did a lot of policy work. I did a lot of work with our NATO allies. So I'd go over to Brussels. So there was a lot of traveling with our NATO allies to work on what do we want to do internationally for security policy? How do we want to have the common approach to like encryption and those types of standards? There's a lot of standard bodies that work. So I would say the lion's share of cybersecurity jobs are in that normal 8 to 5 domain. If you're definitely in an operational center, that is a 24/7. I mean, that's what it's built for. But there's a lot of jobs that are just 8 to 5.
Yeah, for one, I want to say that like Mark and I did not meet before this meeting. It might seem like
Right.
We were coordinating, but I swear it's not the case. One thing I'll say about the op center jobs, The Op Center itself is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for sure. But I would say Op Center jobs themselves are probably the most regular type of job you can have, because like you work your like shift, even if it's like that afternoon shift from like, 4 to midnight or something, you work that shift and then you're done.
Right.
You go home. It's the higher level people that are like at the second or third level of support. They're the ones that usually are on call for 24 hours a day, on weird weekends and stuff like that. So
Guys, you might be pulling some counselors into your career path. We need our counselors. So you're painting a great picture. We are at 9:30. As always, I will gather all these resources and make sure they're in everybody's hands. The video will be posted on Macomb Engage so that you can play this in your classrooms with your students. You might not have rehearsed this, Keith and Mark, but I did in my mind, and that's why I called you too. So our counselors got the best of the best, I would say today, indeed. If you have a minute just to hang out in case any counselors have any additional questions. I know they're always scheduled so tight in their day, so I just wanted to interrupt really fast. And the sign out is in the chat for all of you that are seeking credits for this experience. But otherwise, if you want to hang on and ask some more questions, feel free to for a minute.
So I saw Barbara had another question about organizations willing to help students get their CompTIA certifications. Not that I'm aware of. I know I'm working on, it is absolutely one of my goals to try to find a way to pay for certification exams for my students. It is hard to get funding for that. It's a lot easier to get funding for like $100,000 worth of hardware than it is to get regular funding for certification exams every semester for 10 years. But it is something I'm actively working on with my administration, but it's slow, so we don't have like a strong, we don't have a plan in place for that yet, but it is something I'm working on.
Well, and Keith, to maybe share with some of our conversations down here, our foundation is totally, donor supported, right? And so we have been talking with a lot of our Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, those types of industries, obviously next to the National Security Agency. And we're making some progress on their understanding that if they fund stuff like that, it's to their benefit, because now they're going to be able to hire these kids. And so some of them, the light bulb's starting to come on. And everything. And I agree with you. It's a long path, but it's one that we are constantly working with our company donors to say, hey, this may sound boring. It doesn't sound, you're not buying a whole bunch of new things, setting up a lab. It looks cool. You're just buying certificates for kids. But you're getting a better employee. And so some of them are starting to come around, and we have a couple of donors who are going, okay, we agree. You've sold us. Meade High School here locally asked for some money for their kids to get community college classes and pay for that. And we've got one of our local industry folks say, yep, I think we're going to pull the trigger. So yeah, we just have to keep after the industry people, because I think that's who needs to write the check.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, as you guys are signing off, etc., I want to thank you as counselors. That's a tough job, and one that has passion behind it. And I personally want to thank you for what you do to help our children and our students understand what they can do to not only have themselves be happy with a career path that they choose, but make sure that they're pointed in the right direction. Thank you so much for what you do.
And thank you. I've had both of you, and I've been in the audience with both of you, and so you've been on my heart and my mind as just such great presenters and advocates for this career pathway. And as a school counselor, this is a hard group of students sometimes to motivate because they feel disconnected in a traditional school setting. And the thought of going on to college or university, taking psychology and English and composition, it's really hard for those students to envision that that's what they want to do for the next 5 years. So anything we can do to hook them to see they can get certifications and sort of cut their teeth on college that way and do what they love is really hopefully the angle we can take as counselors so we can get them into that next level.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So everyone, you have their contact information, and I'll make sure that you also get all of their information slides. Keith, I know Mark wanted to connect with you about your slides. So hopefully I'll do an intro email so you guys have your contact and we'll go from there. So thank you, everybody. Have an awesome Tuesday. The sun's out in Michigan, Mark, so we're doing okay.
We're a little rainy here still. Keith, I dropped my
what we had yesterday.
Well, that's normal. You know, my family calls me from Lafayette and I say, okay, 2 days later, we're going to get that weather. So Keith,
that's true.
Keith, I dropped my email in the chat box. Would love to hook up with your students. We're doing, we've got some grant money to do some middle school cybersecurity gaming. And we use that money to help interns, student interns. So, would love to talk about those opportunities.
Great. Yeah, I saw, Barbara, you had one more question about internships. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Barbara. That's a really good question. You know, right now the problem is trying to get employers to accept students with something less than a bachelor's degree, right? A lot of large companies, you know, are looking for students or basically have bachelor's degree or higher before they hire them, and they're not recognizing the quality of community college students, especially ones at, you know, a CAE designated institution like mine, that they have like really strong skills that are perfect for an entry-level job in cybersecurity. And hiring managers just haven't recognized that yet. And it is one of my pet peeves to try to, you know, it's not really in my power to fix it alone, but it is definitely something I bring up to my administration on a regular basis, is that we need to get like local employers in Southeast Michigan, like General Motors and Ford and Chrysler and stuff like that, to recognize that community college degrees, you know, are strong are perfect for like an entry-level job. You know, a lot of these companies, I hate to put it this way, they rather poach than train. They would rather hire somebody like me and double my salary than to like get somebody graduating out of community college and pay them a quarter of what I could make. Right. You know, so that's just kind of the way it works right now, unfortunately.
Thank you for your help, but maybe, you know, another option would be to talk to some of the folks who are working in the departments, not HR necessarily, have them come into your class, be it through NEPRIS or a guest speaker virtually talking about what they're doing and what they're looking for, and maybe an internal push could make a difference.
I do bring in guest speakers, but, you know, one person, you know, here's the thing, like one person inside the company who knows like the quality of my students, you know, is great. But it really is going to take a much broader approach for companies to recognize and change their hiring practices. So I agree with you, and I try that as much as it's within my capability to do so. But really, you know, these companies have to like start seeing that, you know, community college graduates are strong contenders for these entry-level IT and cybersecurity jobs.
Maybe Mark can help you do it on a national basis so it funnels down from the top at the government.
Well, in fact, I was going to ask Keith if he's put that problem space up to the CAE community to Tony Colson yet. And if not, I'd be happy, Keith, to work with you on that problem statement, because I know that we do a lot with the CAE community since we're sitting right here with NSA. Yep. And that is a point of conversation, by the way, not only hiring, but a lot of these companies have unrealistic expectations for their hiring. And I mean, you know, I don't think I could qualify for some of these jobs that they think are entry. And
Right.
so I'm part of AFCEA, which is the Armed Forces Communications Electronics Agency, which is all industry partners. And that's one of the themes I talk about all the time in AFCEA conferences is, come on, guys, you couldn't qualify for the job that you just said you were going to hire for entry. I think these expectations, because we have HR people who are writing the jobs who have no knowledge of the profession. And that's problematic. And so I agree with you, Keith. It's a problem. It's a national level problem, and we need to keep pushing to work that opportunity so we can get these jobs filled. I have several work cases where students come out at the bachelor level with cybersecurity degrees from a CAE and can't get a job.
Yeah, I've seen, I think a lot of times, like, I agree with you about the hiring managers or the HR person. I think sometimes they're writing those job descriptions based on the person who's in the job now, with like 10 years of experience, as opposed to like, well, yeah, but they worked at that for 10 years. Who are you going to get to like come in and learn that job? Because the person who's already been doing it for 10 years doesn't need that job. They've already got something else. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's one of the reasons NSA has such a high success rate in hiring is because we do that internship program, et cetera, which is fine. I don't mind, pushing people to the NSA way, but we also got to get people at the other companies as well. Any other questions? Okay, I've got to drop for another meeting. Thank you very much, Sarah. Really appreciate being able to participate. Drop me a line anytime. Happy to help.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Keith and Mark. Thank you immensely. We really appreciate you. Have a great day.
Yep.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you, Mark.
Nice meeting you too. Look forward to working with you.
Hey, Keith, before you jump off, there's an instructor in the chat that wants to connect with you from Romeo.
Yep.
So
I'm trying to get their email. It's like, I don't know why Zoom doesn't let you copy paste, but
no,
whatever.
select all.
It's like, so I'm trying to get their email address down, but John, so I'm trying to get it out there. Hold on.
All right, no problem. I don't, because if I end this, it'll all disappear. So I don't want to do
Understood.
that.
Okay, I think I got it. All right.
Okay. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.